Just in the recent days, we've seen some major moves both up and down by various automakers. The big one that got lots of attention is Apple's decades-long and billions of dollars spent project being canceled. So let's explore more what happened and if there might be a chance now that Apple reaches out to Tesla for some kind of partnership. Combine this with BYD's recent announcement that they don't intend to enter the US market anytime soon, Lucid and Rivian reporting major cash flow issues, and Volkswagen CEO complaining about Tesla's price cuts. All this starts to look really good for Tesla. So I've got Larry Goldberg here with me, and he's a multi-entrepreneur. Thank you so much, Larry.
Thanks, Herbert, for having me.
So let's talk Apple. The announcement that happened a few days ago, or actually, sorry, you reminded me, it's not an announcement, but it was an internal presentation apparently. So the news that's come out is Apple has decided to wind down their electric car effort. After a decade-long effort to do this, it was known as Project Titan, and then they're now going to move to Apple's AI division. So this was a disclosure internally on Tuesday, surprising the nearly 2,000 employees that was working on the project. Although it says here that people who, the sources who was asked not to be identified, it's pretty widely known at this point that it's actually real true. The decision was shared by the executives at Apple that was in charge of this, Jeff Williams and Kevin Lynch. He was the guy that was in charge of the Apple Watch at one point. Before I played the clip from CNBC, Larry, did you have any quick comments about this?
Yeah, it certainly didn't surprise me. I didn't put any store by that. I've seen some analysts talk about it at length as if it were important. I never considered it important and never considered them serious about it. I mean, there are a whole lot of reasons for that, which I'll talk about, but I fully expected this to happen.
Okay. I mean, I get what you're saying, except that they were serious about it.
They were serious, but
2,000 people, 10 years, multi-billion-dollar investment. So, yeah. Okay, let's watch the CNBC clip, and then we'll hear your reaction to it.
Winding down its electric car effort, and CNBC's Steve Kovac joins us now at the table with more on all of it. What happened?
Yes, scrapping plans, hitting the brakes, whatever metaphor you want to use. But look, this is all coming, Andrew, after about a decade and billions of dollars in spending. Bloomberg, of course, first broke that news last night. It's been since confirmed all over the place. Look, this decision comes after years of leadership changes and deviations from the original dream Apple had of a self-driving electric car. They were calling it Project Titan internally, with no steering wheel or gas pedals. At one point, Apple even thought it could start selling its car by 2020. Projects created a revolving door, though, because between talent from Tesla and Apple attracted executives from traditional car companies as well, GM, BMW, and the like. But look, nothing has ever shipped in the last decade from this group, and many top execs bolted after just a few years. The last project leader, that was Doug Field. He's famous for making the Tesla Model 3. He left Apple for Ford in 2021, and most recently, the group was run by Kevin Lynch. He was originally hired by Apple to make the Apple Watch. His job is changing now, by the way. He's going to start reporting to Apple's AI boss, John Giannandrea, also known as JG internally. But look, now this is over. The group of approximately 2,000 employees working on this will be effective. Presumably, many of those focused on the car, the hardware of the car engineering, they're likely out of a job. But if there is one bright spot for Apple here, we've been talking about this all morning, some of that talent is going to be moved over to that John Giannandrea group to work on artificial intelligence. And speaking of AI, let's talk about what Tim Cook said in 2017, calling the company's self-driving car project, quote, the mother of AI projects. So there are several ways to look at this. I'll give you two. How about this? The realization that it's better to focus the investment on the technology that's happening today, that would of course be AI, instead of chasing a highly regulated and low profit margin market like the auto market. And perhaps all that time and money spent on self-driving, the AI can apply to whatever magic AI thing Apple is going to be working on and expected to announce later this year. Or you can just look at this as a straight up blunder in Apple's failed attempt to disrupt what Morgan Stanley analysts had been calling to this entire journey a $10 trillion industry that Apple could have tapped into. I think Morgan Stanley was saying they just had to capture 2% of that 10 trillion, bigger than the iPhone business.
Okay. What do you think, Larry?
I think Tim Cook must regret that call he never took from Elon Musk so much.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, I wasn't surprised by the the call. What I was surprised by is how long it took them to make that call.
Mm-hmm.
Look, they don't manufacture anything. They're not a manufacturer. They're a software vendor and a designer of, devices. There is a world beyond device. When you get into a mechanical device like a car, it's a whole different world. And it's not as if the supply chain is the same. It's not as if the supply chain bears any resemblance to a phone. So, I was very skeptical of this from the beginning. I didn't regard this as a potential threat to Tesla, and I didn't have it on my list of threats to Tesla when I did the analysis of Tesla. And that, that was done consistently. I think the first time in 2011, Apple wasn't on the horizon. 2014, 2019, they were on the horizon. I didn't have them on the list. And I did it again last year, and they weren't on the list last year. So everybody got excited because Apple, in their mind, has this gigantic aura around it. Has no aura for me. I'm not surprised. And finally, I'll say this. Apple have shown no real skill in AI. Siri is a disaster. It's terrible. Why people continue to use it still, I don't know, but it's really awful. And, that's their contribution. They bought Siri 7 years ago.
Longer.
And they've done nothing with it. So, I'm very skeptical. I'm very skeptical of the AI work. I'm very skeptical of their skill at designing these days. I think their headset was anything but gee whiz to me because, it's not a consumer product yet, not even close. I don't think Steve would ever have let that thing out of the building. So sounds like I'm not a great fan, but, I'm not amazed.
Okay, I'm a big fan of Apple, and I think Siri was obviously a very early on, came in way too early. I think it's way over 10 years at this point, and so they did it hit a local maximum what it can and can't do. AI then developed. I would not count them out on the AI. I think that they will do a great job. Now, this was a major blunder, as I think he used the word blunder by Apple. But Apple needs to get into the autonomous robotic car business because the amount of time that people spend in that vehicle while it's being driven and the entertainment is just too much for Apple to not do. And that's why they spent billions of dollars, 10 years. They needed to do this. But you're right. It was a blunder because they had no, what's the word? No reason. No. They shouldn't have been there at all. They shouldn't have even tried.
Herbert, why wouldn't they just simply stick to the entertainment part of the business in the car?
So how do you do that? And that's why I was going to ask you, right? So how do they do that? So they had the Apple Car, the CarPlay, but our CarPlay is kind of very limited, and they want to control the whole experience inside the car, right? The entire car will be all screens at this point. And then you can see through it, just like you have with the goggles. But do you think now that Apple would partner with Tesla? Every person I've asked this question to said absolutely zero chance. So Tesla has the unboxed model, and with the unboxed model, my belief is it's a platform that they can build multiple different vehicles, and they can really easily design it. And I believe that that's going to be factories the product, and they're going to be able to partner with other third parties who will put a different kind of design car, different badge on it, and maybe have this, a change in how they want to have the experience inside. Is that A, not something Tesla will ever do, and B, Tesla will never partner with Apple?
No, I think Tesla is very happy to partner with people, but Tesla hates walled gardens, and Apple is the principal proponent of a walled garden. I think that in itself inhibits Elon from, quote, partnering. I mean, he's had a very bad experience with the app store in X. And I think that Tesla's strength lies in the very areas where Apple's strength lies. And Apple has really, I think, annoyed Tesla in terms of the hiring that it's done from the Tesla team. So I think that the frenemy relationship is not that great from the outset. I think that they really impinge upon one another's turf. Your idea of Tesla using its unbox process to become a general designer of cars and even manufacturer of cars, or manufacturer of manufacturing facilities for cars, I'm not sure Apple is going to be in that camp. I mean, because Apple does not have a good product manager. Its product management since Steve left has been in a downward spiral, in my judgment. I don't think that they are producing or inspiring devices. That's my... So I'm very biased, as you can hear, and I'm freely admitting it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I agree with you. I can see what you're saying. So let's to round up what's been happening recently. This is a post on X by Gregory Scott, and he says this: connect the dots. So we just talked about Apple canceling their EV program.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did a show on this very recently where BYD, American Boss, the CEO of the Americas, Stella Lee, she was interviewed just a few days ago, and she said this: we're not planning to come to the US. It's an interesting market, but it's very complicated if you're talking about EVs. She added that if a car company does not invest in EVs, you're out, you will die, you have no future. To put this in context, what she was talking about was in China for sure. If you do not invest in EVs, you're out, you'll die, you have no future. That's for sure. But I believe that after that she was pressed about this questioning about will you go to the US, she said that it's obviously very political. And so I think that she's want to make sure that, in this political year, the election year in the US, they stay out of it. But yeah, no, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, right? BYD is going to go into the US. They built a factory in Mexico. They've got a factory being built in Brazil. It's happening. So there's that. Let me just finish this off and I'll get you to answer to each one of them. Lucid lost over $200,000 per vehicle. Rivian reported also $40,000 loss per vehicle last quarter. So they're both of them burning so much cash. Then you got the Volkswagen CEO, and he said there are crazy things going on in China at Tesla, and he's referring to the repeated price cuts by Tesla. So he's obviously being, concerned about what their future is going to be like as well. All of this is happening. And in the meantime, Gregory says this: Tesla is scheduled to release next-gen vehicles, ramping up the popular Cybertruck, having the best-selling car, the Model Y, on the planet last year, and then a very healthy balance sheet. How do you think this ends? What's your thoughts on all this?
Well, I think he's put his finger on the pulse of the beast. I mean,
yeah.
BYD is carving out China and Indo-Pac and Europe as their market. Tesla's carved out the United States as its EV market. It's competing in China with BYD, and it's competing in Europe with BYD, and in Indo-Pac with BYD. And I think that's what we're going to see now. The Chinese market is very large, has been very large, is very large, and BYD is definitely the market leader at the moment. But I think that the threat to them will come in 2026 when Tesla's next gen rolls out. So it's going to be an interesting horse race, but it's a two-horse race. I just don't see any competitor in the EV space coming close. And all these announcements, all these phantom cars from all these phantom car companies, they're not going to amount to very much. That's my view. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. And by the way, BYD has got a lot of respect for Tesla, and Tesla's got a lot of respect for BYD.
Yeah, they both came out very recently with statements just like that, both ways. So it's like we're watching these pure play EVs, which I believe is the only way to succeed in an electric vehicle. You're noticing that the legacy automakers, they're just not going to be able to make it through. It's sad to see that the pure play EVs are also struggling significantly. I mean, you remember Elon's repeating several times that Ford and Tesla are the only two car companies that's ever become profitable. Hundreds and hundreds have died trying to play in the game. And here we are witnessing Rivian and Lucid and now Apple giving up after so much money spent. And so it's hard.
Yeah. And, even the Chinese companies are struggling. And, ironically, it's the European car companies and the American car companies that will breathe some life into these failing Chinese startups. I mean, can you imagine the lack of intelligence of management going into China and funding these failing Chinese companies? Can you conceive of how brain dead somebody has to be to do that? I mean, it's like lemmings. You know what a lemming does.
Yes.
I mean, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. I mean, I've seen stupidity in the software business. We see every couple of years a whole breed of software companies go out of business or die off. I mean, I can tell you in the beginning there were companies like Ashton Tate making DBase 3. I'm sure you've never heard of it before. It was a time when it dominated the software business. Mm-hmm. And, there are quite a few companies like this, but the reality is these companies are going to die. And, it's impossible to think about how Germany would allow Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes to die. But at the end of the day, the country will run out of money trying to keep them in business. Mm-hmm. So, it's just stupidity. It is like feeding your enemy when he's starving. Mm-hmm. Crazy.
All right, there we go. So we've got Apple giving up. We got Tesla that's still doing very, very well, and yet they're not getting rewarded for it. And meanwhile, we're seeing all these other car companies struggling. It's a tough business, and yet we're, cash flow for Tesla. You see that one graph? Tesla's cash flow is just skyrocketing at this point. So it'll be very cool to see what happens in a few years.
Yeah, and on that note, all I have to say is this is a really, really good time for Tesla. Sounds like they're taking a breath, but my word, they are coiling the spring. They are coiling the spring. It's amazing. And with the announcement of the Roadster, I mean, what a time for Tesla. What a time for Tesla. So
can I ask you that question, Larry? Because I haven't asked you this one, which is it some people are saying that for them to have announced the Roadster design lock going to be this year, the end of this year, in production next year, does that not mean that maybe the design lock for the Model 2 compact car is already done?
Oh, it's been done for a while.
Yeah.
The design lock for Tesla for the Model 2 was back in the announcement. They said that they're beginning to do production engineering, and very recently, Elon said the production engineering is done, and they're starting to build out We've seen delivery of equipment that
Texas.
The best analysts have told us is for the Model 2. Mm-hmm. So, or the next gen, I call it, rather than Model 2. So I I saw comments about, oh, they shouldn't do the Roadster. They should be focusing on next gen. Now they're putting next gen back. People don't understand. They can, they can walk and chew gum at the same time. The days of Tesla not being able to do more than one car at a time are over, and they had to be over. And, I've often spoken about Elon wistfully saying, this was about 5 years back, these other car companies can do multiple cars at the same time. We can only do one. Those days are over. They've got the Semi going into, they're building the factory for the Semi. They are in production installation for the model, for the next gen. And they are, getting to design lock for the Roadster, and they're ramping the Cybertruck. So, yeah, they can do 4 cars at a time. Why not?
Love it. Thank you so much, Larry. Follow him on X at Tesla Larry. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.